Hello everyone, welcome back to another video with me, Mimik, and in this video we are going to be ranking every single Nintendo console by, I guess kind of like design and feel. Not more so like, we're not doing games or how much fun it was, we gotta name these. So this is gonna be, I would hold for the rest of my life. This one is GOAT design. This one is, I guess we could just go pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. This one is, I could only hold for a few hours. D will be only on occasions, but probably never. And finally, we got, I don't even want to look at it. So I know I kind of just named these based off of like holding them, but let's be real, it's a game console, so you're gonna be holding something of some sort. But like I said, it's also a bit about design. So I'm gonna add one more row. This row is gonna be named I've never touched or seen in my life. Because I will admit, there's a couple of these I've never have touched or anything. So we're gonna move those there. Don't know what this is. I know what this is, but I've never touched it. Actually, we'll rank it because I've seen them. I've just never held it, so I can't really rate it on that. I think this is the Pokemon Pocket, but I don't know. I think that's all. Yeah. Okay. So let's get to the real ratings. So first, we're gonna start off with we'll do consoles. So first one we have up in line is the NES. NES. I only have held it or like felt the controller and stuff a few times. I will say though, I think the design is pretty good for one of the first ever consoles made. You know, it is pretty self-explanatory. D-pad and 2 buttons. You know, yeah, we have more now, and we use all of them now, but it got the point straight through. You could go up, down, left, right, and then there's 2 actions. But it's also kind of simple, and later down the road, I think we get some better designs. So it's gonna go in pretty good. Next up, we have the Super Nintendo, or the SNES. I think this is the NES on steroids, pretty much. You get 2 bumper buttons and 2 extra buttons like the A, B, X, Y. That we only had A, B on NES. Now we have A, B, X, Y, which let us do a lot more in games and stuff. So I think this can go up to GOAT design. I think the controller is also more comfortable. I will say that the NES is a little bit uncomfortable, but I think, honestly, I will say I'm probably going to move them down. Because it's not peak, but this one's also a little bit uncomfortable here and there. Then we have the N64. I don't know. I feel like some people have complaints. I will say the controller's a little weird. I will like to say this is the first controller I think to have a joystick, and that is revolutionary. But at the same time, I don't think I like the design of the controller so much. I think it's cool for like at the time, but I think we've actually gotten way better in design of controllers and stuff and all that. But I will say it's still pretty good. It's just not my favorite. The controller is definitely more comfortable than the last ones. There's a lot of buttons though in a lot of weird places that makes it kind of confusing if you've never been shown how to use these. So I'm gonna go bottom of pretty good. Next up, we have the GameCube. Now, the GameCube controller. Some people still use this for like Smash Bros and stuff. And the console design, I think, was pretty good. Of course, this is the first console they've done where they moved away from cartridges to discs. So, and they were smaller than the average disc that you were seeing on PS1s and all those consoles. PS2, I think, was out around the time though. The controller is a lot more comfortable. It's a lot more ergonomic to your hand. There's not like 3 areas you can hold. It's like just the 2 that you put your hand in. There's 2 bumpers and a trigger. There's the ABXY, which are in kind of weirder spots than we see now, but they still work. There's the C-stick, the joystick, and the D-pad. I think this is kind of where it almost peaked on design. Honestly, it probably is the most peak design for a Nintendo console that has a controller like this, I would say, at this time. I think it goes to GOAT design, personally. I love the GameCube and stuff. I love the games on there, and I know I said the games aren't related, but I just think it also is inspired. You have 4 controllers, there's memory slot, and all the design of the controller is really nice. Next we have the Wii. Now the Wii, they went from their classic controller style, and they kind of reverted back to NES, but also in a different direction. Obviously, the Wii's controller was the Wiimote. The Wiimote was supposed to be designed after a remote, because it's supposed to be a console that anyone could use. Old, young, anyone could pick this up, and they kind of already know how to use it, because most people have remotes and stuff. It also used discs like the GameCube. You could actually play GameCube and hook up a GameCube controller to it, which I will say even ups the design. Not only is it convenient and easy to learn, is that it also adds backwards compatibility with controller and games to the GameCube. On top of that, I will say, like, I'm not going to go over UI and stuff. I might do a separate video on that, but the UI for it is great too. Pretty easy. It's also one of the few times you've ever seen a console like this. It's a lot, like, it fits in. Most consoles, especially Nintendo and stuff, were very toy-like and stuff. They had colors, like the GameCube had colors, and the NES, and the NES kind of had dual colors. I meant the N64 had like those the variants you can get with the transparent colored shells, and they were just very like unique designs. But this is the first ever one they've done that was just super plain. It was either white or black, and it was just it stood up the whole time, and it kind of just blended in with everything. It made everything feel super seamless and stuff. And like I said, the controller felt nice. There was the nunchuck attachment, which gave you a joystick for some games. And I will say it goes behind GameCube, though, because I think the GameCube's still better. Honestly, no, I'll put it up, because you can literally just play GameCube on it. I think that makes it peak, honestly. And a lot of more people could get into the consoles. Alright, I forgot when this came out in line, because it was some people don't even know this thing exists. I would say it's probably one of the most worst released consoles for them, if you can call it that. I don't even know what it's considered. It's the Virtual Boy. We're gonna rank that. So I'm just gonna go off this image. I can't really see much. I will say the controller's a lot more like the GameCube than any of the other ones. I think it might have been before the GameCube. I don't remember. But this console doesn't hook up to your TV or anything. It's like VR, kind of. You don't really move your face around. You put your face in though, and it does the VR thing and stuff. Makes depth. This was their first little attempt at something 3D. But the thing is, it was only in red and black, so you couldn't really. There was only red and black, and it was giving people headaches, I'm pretty sure, and like migraines. And the controller, I will say, the controller looks a little bit more decent than some but at the same time, it doesn't. But like I said, I'm going off of design as well. I don't even want to look at it. Honestly, I'll look at it, but at the same time, I don't really. It's not that I wouldn't want to be caught using it. I'm sorry. The Switch 2 has those games on it now, and that's probably the best way I could say you could play it. But I wouldn't want to have this on my desk and be like someone walk in and I'm playing on it. I think that's a little much. All right, let's get back on track. Which ones I know when they came out. We have the last, I'd say, home console of Nintendo is the Wii U. This is known as the failed child in home consoles. We're not talking about Virtual Boy. Don't even look at it. The Wii U was the most undersold console for the most part of Nintendo. Reasonings is because when they marketed the Wii U, they marketed it as it looked like an accessory for the Wii. So people didn't look at it as, some people were like, oh, I don't need this. It's just an accessory for something that I already have the console for. I don't need an accessory that I probably won't use. And or they just didn't understand it, and a lot of people did not buy one. Little bit later, Nintendo re-advertised it and stuff with the trying to make sure you know it's a console, but it still didn't really work. People were set with their Wii and stuff, so it failed. But I will say, the first ever console that I've owned, I've had all these other consoles and stuff. Like, I've had Xbox 360s and all those. I had a Wii and all. I had a bunch of consoles. The first one I could say was mine. I didn't buy it. It was a gift, but it wasn't a gift for the family. It was a gift for me. It was the Wii U. And let me tell you, I only had a few games on there, but the games I did have were pretty peak. I'll say it's one of the best consoles I have ever owned. Just, I say a little bit for nostalgia, but the games were actually really fun. And we'll see why later, too. I told you, not games, but like I said, the games were fun. It made it fun. The device, I will say, the Wii U gamepad's a little weird. The joysticks are on the top, and it's like a reverse PlayStation layout. Instead of the joysticks on the bottom, the joysticks are on the top. But I didn't really mind it as much. It was comfortable enough to hold. And it had 2 triggers and 2 bumpers. It had all the face buttons, the D-pad, A, B, X, Y, 2 joysticks, the bumpers and triggers, like I said. It had a start and select. It also had like a TV button to control your TV and a home button. And you could play games on the TV and on there, or at the same time if it's one of those games. It also was backwards compatible with the Wii, so you could use all the Wii modes, and actually, some of the games for the Wii U used the Wii modes. So it also probably was part of the misunderstanding, but you could play old Wii games, you could play new Wii U games, you could do a bunch of stuff, backwards and forwards with the Wii and the Wii U stuff. So, where will I put it? I'm going to put it at the top of pretty good. Oops, go in there. Thank you. The thing is that, like I said, it's not the best. There's definitely better designs for consoles, but it's definitely one of the better ones. And I wish it did get more popular. Alright, so that was all the home consoles. Now, I'm going to do Switch last because the Switch is a hybrid console. The only handheld Switch I'm going to do, which will kind of be an in-between, is the Switch Lite. But we are doing handheld consoles now. For the first ever handheld console, we have the Game & Watch. Now, I didn't know about it till I was a little bit older, so I don't think it was extremely popular, but it was definitely, at its time, pretty cool and pretty revolutionary. I'm pretty sure his name was Yokoi, was the guy who invented it. He got inspired by watching someone play on their calculator on the bus, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. And so he invented a little pocket handheld game. Now, the games on there, I will say, and I'm pretty sure some of them had very different designs for the controls. Honestly, I wish I could have them all in here because there's a bunch of different ones. But I will say it was probably a little annoying when you wanted to play a different game because you'd have to buy a brand new one. But I still think it's revolutionary. But I think I can only hold for a few hours. It's small, and I would want to play a different game eventually, and I couldn't. But this is when it got crazy. Later, we would get the Game Boy. The Game Boy was pretty much the Game & Watch, but like a lot better. The actual like game would be a lot more fluid. It had a lot more games that could be on there. There's a lot more made for it, and you can change which game you play by a cartridge, which obviously the Game & Watch couldn't. So it was basically a portable NES, I would say. Had the same buttons and had the same kind of look and used cartridges. Honestly, the cartridges kind of looks the same. They just were smaller. But it also was really big and chunky, and you had to carry batteries around if it died. And I don't think it's the best Game Boy that they made. But I don't think it's the worst. I think it's pretty good, actually. So we're going to I'd put it below SNES. Honestly, no, we're going to put it at the bottom of pretty good. All these other ones I'd rather hold. Honestly, I'm going to move this around. Yeah, there we go. This is right. But after that, we got the Game Boy. Yeah, the Game Boy Pocket. The Game Boy Pocket was a lot more smaller and a lot more pocket size. Now this was a portable console. The other one was about portable, but mostly kids were playing it. So it was kind of hard to put a giant brick in your pocket. So they made a Game Boy Pocket. Played all your Game Boy games, but in a lot smaller form factor. I will say that makes it a lot better than the Game Boy. Is it perfect? No. But it's a lot better. So we're going to put it up above Game Boy. Honestly, I'm going to move the Game Boy above the NES. Next, though, we got the Game Boy Color. Now, the last 3 Game Boys were all in single tones. Like the first Game Boy was all green and darker greens and lighter greens. And then the other ones are all black and white. The Game Boy Color, the name suggests, we got color on the screen. Now, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this one had a backlight. I'm pretty sure you had to shine a light on it. If not, I'm sorry for the false information, but it still was insane to have. It was smaller than the original Game Boy. It had color to play all your Game Boy games in it. They even made games called Game Boy Color games, which had a lot more vibrant colors. I'm pretty sure that all the other Game Boy games had a little bit of color in them, but it wasn't as much as the Game Boy Color games. So we're definitely putting that up here. And then we have the Game Boy Advance. Now the Game Boy Advance was the right direction, I think, towards a good Game Boy. It had a more, I think the word would be narrow screen. Instead of a cube, it was about more like a rectangle. It had 2 bumpers, D-pad and A and B, and it had more, I'd say, advanced games. It had more power. You could play more bigger games on it. Not insanely big, but bigger. We got like Pokemon Emerald and stuff, which was one of the greatest Pokemon games. But other than the games, I think the form factor too, like holding it, was a lot nicer. Because it would you'd wrap your hands around it instead of trying to hold your hands together like the other one. A lot more space for your hands. But like I said, also had to have a light shined on it, which I will say the Game Boy Color did not have a light, I remember. So this, though, I can't say it's better than the controller for the SNES, though. It was basically an SNES controller, minus 2 buttons, and the screen was in the middle. Honestly, here, I'll put it up. Now, Hold on. We're gonna move these around. My decision has changed. There you go. That's the updated one. Next on the Game Boy line, we get the Game Boy SP. Now this one I'm pretty sure was backlit. If I'm wrong again, sue me. Don't actually. But now this you would see leading more to Nintendo's later consoles. A lot closer design wise. It had the same button layout, 2 bumpers as the Game Boy Advance. They played Game Boy Advance. Oh, I will say Game Boy Advance and SP played Game Boy games and was in color. It was backwards compatible. But it played all those games, but it also had a clamshell design. So you could fold it and fit it in your pocket a lot better than the other ones. And nothing would get messed up. No screen mess up, nothing of that. So even though I say the controls are not as good as the Game Boy Advance, it definitely is better than the Game Boy Advance. Because backlit screen and just the portability was a lot better on this. Now in the final Game Boy to ever come out, it's a pretty weird ad, but it's the Game Boy Micro. You thought the Game Boy Advance or SP got small? No, guess what? Game Boy Micro, that's small. I think you could play Game Boy Advance games. I don't remember. I don't even remember. I never got to use this. I've seen that though enough to know that I wouldn't want to look at it. That's all I know. Is it's so small. The ad weirded me out. It was definitely trying to be like its time, like futuristic, I guess, kind of tech look, but it just didn't look good in my opinion. That was all the Game Boys. We're on the final few runs of just pure handheld devices. First though, we have to start off with, hold on. Dang, we don't have it on here. I just realized we're missing an image. Hold on. I'll see if I... Next in line, after the Game Boy Micro, I'm pretty sure, is the DS. The original DS. Now, I will say this is the worst design they've done for a DS. That includes the 3DS. All of the DSs. The DS, the original DS, is the worst design out of all of them. But it also was revolutionary. What did it add? We're gonna take this from the SP because the SP is probably the closest one to it. It added 2 extra buttons like the SNES had. It had a D-pad, ABXY. It had 2 bumpers on the back. That was about it. It also had a second screen in between. It was like you basically took a Game Boy Advance and then put the SP screen on top and like the clamshell, attached it to the top of the Game Boy Advance so you get 2 screens. That's what it did. And then put the speakers on the side. And the bottom one was actually a touchscreen. So you had 2 screens, all these buttons. You had new games, obviously. You had DS games. You had a stylus as well, and a touchscreen. So this is pretty peak, you know, on paper. I'm pretty sure you could also play Game Boy Advance games, but the design was buns looking. It was basically a Game Boy Micro. It was curved. It was like bulky a little bit. It was just not a great look. It's still a good idea. Obviously they perfected it, but just the design was kind of bad. So I would probably gonna have to put it at only on occasion, but probably never. This is our first ever one we're putting here. Now, did they improve it? Oh, yes, they did. They improved it by making the DS Lite. The DS Lite was like the same thing. But guess what? It actually had a good design. It wasn't all curved. It was a square. It was basically a slab. It was square. It was perfectly designed. And it had some cool colors with it. I think that's all that I added, but it made it 100 times better. To the point that I'm going to put it on pretty good. Honestly, actually, we're going to do, yeah, pretty good. It's still kind of small, but it was way better. And I'm pretty sure you still could play all your Game Boy games. Don't come at me, though, if you can't. Now, we are a little bit rapid fire, a little bit on these DSs, because they kind of were the same. Now, after the DS Lite, they came out with the DSi. The DSi, the I standing for, I'm pretty sure, internet. You can connect to the internet. Now, if I remember, I might be wrong, they removed the Game Boy cartridge, but which was kind of sad, but they added internet support and they added a camera on the back. So you take front cameras and you connect to internet. They added this cool, like I forgot what it's called, like application thing where you can actually go to places and your DSi can connect and download like demos for things or something. Like McDonald's had it and stuff. I forgot what it was called. I think it was like DS Network or something. I don't remember. But it was one of the coolest things they ever did with the DS. But that was about the difference between the DS and the DSi. The DS Lite and DSi is they added another camera and they added internet to it and stuff. But I will say that is a lot better than the DS. And then right after that, they also came out with the DSi XL, which basically was the peakest design they ever did. Bigger screen, bigger device, but all the functions included. That was about it. The DS is pretty, I will say, pretty revelational for what it did because of the next coming consoles. But that's basically all I can really say about them, if I'm not counting games. I think they were pretty okay to hold, but they inspired a new DS, which was a lot better. It was the 3DS. Now, this was my first ever handheld console. Right? The 3DS was, I say, Nintendo's almost best handheld time. Honestly, one of the best, if not the best handhelds, like, era they had. At first, though, it did start off pretty rough. It was almost like it was coming out to be like a Wii U. Now, I'm pretty sure, and it also had a rough start. But it wasn't because people didn't think it was an accessory or anything. It was because it was expensive. It was an expensive console device for when it released. And that kind of upset people because it was small. It was a small handheld console. It wasn't a whole big console. It was a small one. It was a portable. It wasn't as powerful. It didn't need to be that expensive. I don't remember the price, but I'll probably put it up on screen. But it was expensive for its time. Obviously, some people here might be younger than, or like were like a baby when this thing came out, so they're seeing this with the recent prices. It's like, oh yeah, that's normal. What are you talking about? But so after that happened, they lowered the price later, but it was glossy. They made the design glossy. It was a kind of like a, if you played Minecraft, it's kind of like Minecraft Diamonds, like look right here, and it came in some other colors, but it was glossy, and it was small, glossy, kind of like, what's the word, chiseled? I don't know how to say it. It wasn't like rounded. It was like kind of like angled corners with like sharp turns a little bit, and it was about the size of a DS though, I think. So it wasn't, you can see fingerprints pretty easy, which kind of sucked, but I will say there's some stuff that they added for this. One, the top screen is bigger. It's a pretty much, I think it's a 16:9 screen. It's a lot wider, so they had two different screen sizes instead of the original same size screens. And they added 3D, which we'll just say that was probably, no one cared about 3D really at all. I'll just say. A lot of people would get headaches from it or didn't like it. Most people just left it off, so it It wasn't that great of a design. Was it cool to have 3D without 3D glasses? Yes. But it was a part of an era where 3D was popular for a bit and then it died super hard. But I will say, I think its design is worse than is not as good as the DS, but functionality it is better than DS. Well, we're gonna put it in between the DSi and the DS Lite, just because I don't think I can fully say it's the best 3DS. Now, after the 3DS and stuff, they came out with the 3DS XL. Well, have we heard that word before? DSXL? Yep. The DSi XL. Basically the same idea, but in a 3DS. Bigger device, bigger screens, and basically it, but they did a little bit different with the 3DS. They made the design a lot better. It was rounded, it was just a lot nicer, it wasn't glossy, just a lot nicer design. That's about it though. That with it and stuff. Basically the same, but I will say it's better than the DSi XL. So it's definitely going in GOAT design. Then after that, some time happened, and everyone thought this was a joke. Everyone thought this was an April Fool's joke when they released this 3DS. If you can even call it a 3DS, because it's not called one, it's the 2DS. Now, there's going to be some people probably like, oh, I love the 2DS. The 2DS was the best. Then you never had a 3DS, I think. It was impossible to kind of carry in your pocket. It didn't fold. It's what we like to call a cheese wedge. It was angled and did not fold. The screens were technically one screen that had just a cut in between where you couldn't see because it was plastic. It was long, it was kind of awkward, and it was basically a 3DS that was cheaper and didn't have 3D. But it wasn't that good. So I'm gonna say, is it as bad as DS? I don't think it's as bad as DS. Because the DS isn't that bad. I'll say that, but it was pretty bad. So I'll do there. Design sucked. But then they got better. The new 3DS XL. Now the name was kind of confusing. Still kind of weird and confusing, but people understand it a little more. Because obviously it's not new. It's old. But the point of it was pretty much a upgraded. It's like the DSi. The new 3DS, what it added was a way more powerful chip inside than the 3DS, so we could play more powerful games. We got Minecraft on this and stuff. It had more advanced 3D, which I will say, if you're gonna play 3D, use this device because it would track your face so that the 3D image didn't get distorted when you moved your head. It had basically all the rest of the same functionalities, but one thing. It added one thing new, and that was the nub, or the C. Do we call it a C stick? I don't remember. I call it the C nub, the nub. If you ever seen a PSP, the little joystick nub thing on there, it's basically that, but slightly worse. Because you don't feel like it's moving. It feels like a pencil eraser. Now, will I say, did it do its purpose? Yes. Do I want to use it? No. Did I use it? Yes. Because some games had to use it. But for the most part, not many. So it wasn't that great. But other than that, it still was a pretty worthy upgrade. I will also add, the new 3DS, only the new 3DS did this. The back plate was changeable. I don't know why they didn't do more with this. First, the new 3DS was mostly only sold in Japan. They had like a Black Friday deal in America, and they had like a little bit of releases here, but they didn't do much at all here with it. It was mostly in Japan, which they could have done a lot more here, because the front and the bottom plate could be taken off, and you could buy new plates and put them on to design your 3DS. There's the Black Friday ones, which were like a Mario design. There was Mario Maker designs. There was Pokemon designs. Zelda, I think, had a design. There was designs, but no one but they didn't really sell them here, so no one got to use them that much. I had this one. There's probably I'm pretty sure there's a video on my channel about the 3DS. You'll see the Black Friday black design of this device. I will say it was pretty good. Was it small? Yes. So was it as good as the 3DS XL? No. But it was definitely pretty good. And I'm going to put it, honestly, right here. I think that's a pretty good spot. Then, they kind of did peak its design a little bit more. They made the 3DS XL. Now, this is kind of sucks. It's basically the same thing, yes, but bigger. But they removed the changing panels. Like I said, they could have done this super well, and they didn't. And guess what? This is the one they sold here, so no one really knew about the panel changing stuff. But for the most part, it was still better design, same thing, but it was a lot bigger screen. 3DS XL, but better. Now, this is what I'd arguably say is the best 3DS. It's the last one we're doing. But to use microSD, you'd have to take the back panel off to do it. And I will say, if you're in the modding community, that's a pain in the butt to do, because if you want, you have to keep it unscrewed or something, and they could fall off. But it was on the bottom there, and then also the game cartridge was in the back or on the front. No, it was on the front for the new 3DS. It was on the back for the 3DS. And it was just open. It was kind of weird. So they fixed that all with the new 2DS. It was actually, I'm pretty sure the new 2DS, I'm pretty sure it released after the Switch. I think it did. It's a lot newer than the other ones. So what did they do with this one? Well, it's a longer, I think, more so, body, more flush. It's a lot nicer design. I would say out of all of them, this is the best one. It has the same nub, the same buttons, but it's like the original 2DS, but has a clamshell. It's the new 3DS without 3D. It was cheaper, but better design. They improved the 2DS and basically made it the best one. It had a flat, like on the other ones, there was bevels on the bottom screen. Those are gone. They had they have all the same buttons, but the stylus, I think the stylus on the other ones were in the front. This one was probably, I think, the shortest stylus that they've done and stuff. I'm just gonna get to the point. I don't know what I'm doing. The game slot and the SD card were moved to a way better spot. They're in the front still. Well, the game card's still in the front, but they moved the SD to the front. And not only did they move that stuff to the front, they put it behind a flap. So you can just open the flap, take out your SD card and stuff, easy peasy. Or if you want to put a game, or didn't even want to put a game, you could close this flap and not have any dust get in, and it just disappears. It's hardly able to be seen. And like I said, all the same features of the new 3DS XL. Same size, same screen, but no 3D. And it was cheaper, and exclusive variants, like the special designs, were the best I think they ever done with a console. The Pokeball had a button that I'm pretty sure actually clicked. There's a Pikachu one. That one was probably the worst one in my opinion, but the face was kind of like puffed up, like where the nose is. There's the Minecraft one, which had like pixels of different like heights and stuff with a creeper face. And then my favorite one of all time, the Zelda one, was the Hyrulean Shield, and they actually like put like 3D designs and stuff. Like it was actually not, it wasn't just flat. I was a little all over the place with this one, but point is, this is in my opinion the best 2DS. The only flaws it had was the hinge. It's a little floppy, but other than that, it's the best design, and it was the cheapest one too. Honestly, I think it goes above the Wii. No, I'm sorry, I can't do that. It goes above the GameCube. It's probably, at this point, the best handheld they ever did. Pure handheld. Now, that, we got the last four for this. The Switch line. We're going to start off with, not the first Switch, we're going to start off with the Switch Lite, because the Switch Lite is a handheld. It's a pure handheld. Cannot connect to a TV. It's not a hybrid. The Joy-Cons don't come off. It's just a handheld. I say it's pretty good. Is it 3DS good? I don't know. You can play all of the Switch games on it, as long as they didn't involve a Joy-Con, which you could still play those. You just had to have a pair of Joy-Cons with you. It's hard to say. I don't really want to describe the design as much until I get to the Switch, because the Switch has the base design, but it's about the size of a phone, slightly bigger. It had a single screen. The screen kind of sucked on the light. I will say it was a chance of being more yellow. The joysticks and D-pads were kind of small. It had a traditional D-pad, I will say. Compared to the Switch, it had a traditional D-pad. It had trigger, bumper, all those. It had the plus, minus, home button, all that. Screenshot button. I think if you wanted a pure handheld, it's pretty good. It's better than the Wii, in my opinion, too. Actually, no, it's worse than the Wii because it's too small. Alright, got that out of the way. All the handhelds. Now we're on only hybrid. Now I'll explain the Switch more. 2017, I was hyped. Nintendo Direct. They announced, well, actually, I think it was E3. I don't remember. Nintendo event. They announced the Switch. I was hyped. I was jumping into the ceiling. My little brain. I wanted this. This was like the Wii U, but way better. And that's basically what the Switch is. It's the Wii U, but the good way. What it was a handheld console that you could put on your TV. Thing is, the Wii U, you couldn't leave your house. You had to play with your console. The Switch, you leave your house and you come back. Why? Because you didn't have... The console was in the Switch. You put it on a dock and it go to the TV. Now, the thing is super cool too is you had two controllers out the box. Because you had two Joy-Cons. You could use a single controller or put them sideways and have two controllers. Of course, they weren't the most comfortable, but they worked. Now, the screen also had big bezels, which honestly, you don't even realize until you actually play on like a Switch OLED that they're that bad. But other than that, it was pretty good design. But there were some flaws. The kickstand on there, don't use it. Not worth it. It just breaks off. The flap for the game cartridge, kind of flimsy. I think a couple of people's broke. The vents on the top, terrible, too thin. They broke eventually because of heat and stuff. Mine never did, but some people's did. And the Joy-Cons, don't get me started. They were great, but the joysticks had the worst stick drift out of any controller I've ever had. I don't know how Nintendo did it so badly with those, but the joysticks, the Switch was most notorious for drifting. And there was to the point that Nintendo had got sued or something, and they had to fix people's Joy-Cons for free, I'm pretty sure, or $1 for shipping. But at the end of the day, it still was one of the best consoles that they ever did. I'm gonna have to say, it's a GOAT design, better than the Wii. It basically had two small Wii remotes on it. Then after that, they released an OLED. It's the Switch, but had a newer design, a lot nicer design. The screen was bigger, had an OLED screen, and so it looked nicer and the colors were right. It was actually slightly, half a millimeter, I think, longer than the original. If you have the original Switch and you have a chance to see an OLED dock, put your Switch in there. You'll see that it's slightly too small for the dock. It still works, but you'll see it. It's a little weird. But, I think they had better battery life. And the kickstand on the back was the full back. Half of the back was a metal kickstand. It was great. and the vents were changed. The key card, the game cartridge slot was fixed a bit. But that was about it. The Joy-Cons were the exact same. They had white ones on release. And that was about it. The dock design was slightly nicer too. Like I said, it's just a nicer version of the Switch. It wasn't a DS to DS Lite. It actually kind of was. It was more so like a 3DS to new 3DS. But it was better than the Switch. Honestly, here, I'll put the Switch underneath Wii just because of that, those flaws. Now, the final console. The most newest console came out about a year ago. This was the Switch 2. And all I can say about it is... all I can say, there's so much to say. This is what we should have got, honestly, back then. Now, I'm not saying we could or they had the ability to, but this is the best design for the Switch they've ever done. One, it's bigger screen, bigger console, but it's not, it's as thin as the original Switch. So it's still thin, which I know sometimes makes it harder to play, but I think because it's bigger, it actually is easier. The joysticks are bigger, the system of how they worked, I'll say that too. Old Switch had rail system, and there was like a little like piece that would hold it in. From taking it out and in, that wore out to the point where the Joy-Cons would just come off. The new one was magnetic, so you just pull them off or put them on like with a button. There's nothing that can break to make it so they don't go back on. I think they fixed the joysticks to be pretty decent. The ergonomics are a lot better. It's a lot more curved to your hand, and like the triggers are a lot more curved to your hand. The kickstand on the back is kind of like a handle a little bit, but it's still the metal kickstand. It's just not the whole body. The cartridge, this is the best improvement they've done for the cartridge. Instead of lifting from the front and like pulling backwards, you lift up from the back and then pull. So, and it has like a metal thing encasing around, so it's super protective. What else is there? The dock is a lot bigger, and then also hardware wise, they added like it can run Cyberpunk from the cartridge and stuff, and it looks really well. A lot of people will be like, well, it's not like a PC. Okay, my PC probably can't run it. I would rather play Cyberpunk on this than anything else, because I can play it on the go or at home on my TV, and it's not even that loud. The Switch doesn't even get that loud. I don't know how they did it. It's honestly a miracle how they got this thing to do what it does. The screen's an LCD, not an OLED, but honestly, it looks better than my OLED. I'm not even gonna lie. The color's a lot better. It has HDR support and all that. And when you dock it, it gets more powerful. How do they do it? I don't know. But I think this is peak Nintendo. There's some flaws, but there's always flaws. You can't have be perfect. The GameCube was flawed in some ways. The Wii was flawed in some ways. The Switch was flawed in some ways. The 3DS was flawed in some ways. You can't have a perfect thing. This is the closest I think they've gone. Also, it has GameCube NSO. Not many games, but it's about to get full. Hopefully, it'll get more. So you basically can play almost everything, but like DS, Wii, 3DS, and Wii U games on it. You can even play Virtual Boy. Enough said, though. I think this goes at the top. I'm sorry. I'm a sucker for it. It's one of my favorite consoles they've ever done. I know this whole video was all over the place, because I've never done this before, and I have a really hard time deciding where things should go. But I want to pick 3 devices that can go on the top that I would hold for the rest of my life. It's a section where, like I said, I hold it for the rest of my life. It's the best ones. Now, 3 sections. One of these you're probably not going to say it's fair, but too bad. Device home console, portable console, hybrid. Those are the 3 that I'm doing. So to go with now it's kind of easy. Portable, 2DS. Obviously, I think that's the best that I would hold for the rest of my life. Now, this might be a little shocking, I guess, because of how this list looks, but for home console, I'm putting the Wii U. I know it wasn't at the top, but it can play Wii games, it can play Wii U games. It's basically the Wii plus more. That's all I can really say. And then, for hybrid, come on guys, it's the Switch 2. Now, I'll put these in order. There you go. The Wii U will be on the bottom, but this is what my tier list looks like. If you made it this far, I'm going to just say a little bit about some stuff. So, this is my redoing of my second channel, which originally was my main channel. So, you will see some older videos of me on there, of stuff that I've done. But, it's going to be a lot more random technical videos and stuff. Like I said, I didn't rate the games, I rated the consoles and how they looked and felt. That's what this channel is going to be a bit more about. So, I hope you do guys enjoy this type of content. I'll probably do more tier list type stuff. If you want to see my other stuff though, my more gaming related content on my other channel, my main channel, Mimik. It's a lot more games, a lot more just less technical stuff. So, yeah. But without further ado, if you enjoyed, thank you for watching. Good